Thank you for joining today to learn how Compliance Manager can help you simplify compliance and reduce risk. This is part one of a three-part series where we'll deep dive into some of the great functionality and capabilities of our Compliance Manager solution. With the exponential growth in business and consumer data, in addition to the frequent regulatory changes, it's difficult for businesses like yours to manage compliance obligations in an efficient and cost-effective way. We're excited to announce the general availability of Compliance Manager, our end-to-end compliance management solution that helps organizations simplify compliance, reduce risk, and meet global, industry, or regional regulations and standards. Now let's jump in and show you what our solution is all about. Compliance Manager sits within the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, which is a specialized workplace for compliance, privacy, risk, and legal professionals. Here on the left-hand tab, you'll find Compliance Manager. You can also access the solution through the Compliance Manager card, which summarizes your tenant's compliance score performance. Today, I'll walk you through the basic features so that you understand how the solution helps manage compliance by recommending actions you can take to comply with industry standards that matter most to your organization. Once we click through, we're landed on the Compliance Manager overview page, where you can easily view and assess your overall compliance posture with Compliance Score. At a glance, this score allows you to quickly understand your progress in meeting the data protection requirements and regulatory standards that matter most to your organization. You'll see here that the majority of the score comes from Microsoft Managed Actions. This shows the benefit of shared responsibility. When organizations like yours move data to the cloud, Microsoft, as a cloud service provider, provides built-in data protection controls in our service to secure the data, while your organization still needs to take some actions to implement effective controls and meet regulatory compliance. That was a mouthful, so I'll quickly break down some terminology before we dive in. A control is a requirement of a regulation, standard, or policy. An action is an activity that helps implement a control, and an assessment is a grouping of controls from a specific regulation, standard, or policy. By default, Compliance Manager gives you a score based on common regulations and standards, specifically the Microsoft 365 Data Protection Baseline, which is a set of controls that includes key regulations and standards for data protection and general data governance. This baseline draws elements primarily from NIST and ISO, as well as from FedRAMP and GDPR. To the right of my score, I can see a list of key improvement actions that need attention. This view shows me the top actions I can take to improve my compliance posture and the resulting impact it will have on my score. Once I take these actions, my score will then update accordingly, and the solution will continuously scan my environment and flag anything additional that needs action. If I want to see my score with regard to a specific solution or regulation, I can use the filter to adjust the summary view based on the regulations and standards I want to track for my organization. I can also filter by solution, such as AAD, AIP, DLP, categories such as information protection or insider risk management, action type, whether that's technical, operational, documentational, assessment group, if that's by business unit or subsidiary, or the year of assessment. For example, let's filter specifically for the EU GDPR regulation. Now you'll see that the score calculation only includes GDPR controls after I apply the filter. The key improvement actions also only show the actions that can help enhance controls for GDPR compliance. The detailed implementation guidance tells you what steps to take and directs you to the appropriate solution. If I scroll down the page, I can also see my score breakdown by category, such as govern information, protect information, and more. This allows me to easily understand the contribution I'm taking towards organizational compliance by category. I can also switch the view to see by assessments. And here I can see my score breakdown by regulations and standards, including GDPR, CCPA, ISO, NIST, and other industrial and regional compliance requirements. Depending on your role, you can use either categories or assessment view. For example, if you're an admin, then you'd likely find categories view that gets you started on the area such as information protection that you might be working on. On the other hand, if you're a compliance officer, then you can quickly find your organization's progress with any given regulation in this assessment view. We currently provide more than 150 assessments, helping you make connections between each regulatory requirement and the solutions that can help you enhance your controls. thus increasing your overall score. So let's jump in and learn a bit more about setting up an assessment. So here you can select from our library of over 150 assessments, modify them to suit your needs, or build your own custom assessments to track what's most important for your organization. This assessments page lists the assessments you select to track for your organization, and your compliance score denominator is determined by all of your tracked assessments. Thus, the more assessments you add, the more improvement actions you see on your improvement actions page, and the higher your score denominator is. Let's click Add Assessment, then choose from our selection of 150 plus out-of-the-box templates, for example, GDPR or NIST 853. In this example, let's choose GDPR. We'll then click Next and create a name for our assessment and assign it to the appropriate group. It's easy to review and create assessment. Now let's drill into our assessment to view control details and testing status. Here I can see all of the control information associated with this assessment, and if I click into the Control tab and scroll down the page, I can select a control family. For example, Organization of Information Security, and drill down into the mobile device policy. And now I can see a breakdown of key improvement actions in addition to all of the actions that Microsoft took to meet this control requirement. I can click in to find detailed implementation notes and test notes from Microsoft. But let's go back and choose an action that's automatically monitored by Compliance Manager, but that my organization has not yet implemented, as shown by a failed test status. If we scroll down the page, we can do some quality assurance and search for failed controls to enhance our compliance readiness. Clicking through, we can see require mobile devices to use a password has failed medium risk test status. On the left-hand side, you can click to see all of the various controls that this action is applicable to across all of your assessments. Again, removing the need for duplicative effort. I can learn more about setting up this policy by visiting the supporting documents here. And from there, I can easily go to the configuration page from the Launch Now deep link and take action right away, which will then drive me directly to the Launch Now page and where I can do my work. Alternatively, I can pick a control that requires an update manually. Similar to the last action we saw, when I click through required mobile devices to wipe on multiple sign-in failures, you can see that there's clear guidance on how to implement the control and the Launch Now link with the configuration page. The difference is that this action doesn't have the automated assessment yet. However, I can edit the status here to update this control status. I can then assign this action to my colleague to help me implement or assess controls, allowing me to collaborate across teams. Once the team has taken action, they can change the implementation status. And if you have other ways to implement this control, you can choose alternative implementation here. Both implemented and alternative implementation will include this action into your Compliance Manager scope. I'll just choose implemented. I can also choose the implementation date to record the date for audit reports. Similarly, once my internal auditors or assessors assess the control, he or she can come into the Compliance Manager solution to mark the test status and the test date. Only actions with the test status as passed will receive points associated with their compliance score. Once I save this update, I can see the implementation status and test status changed and that I received 27 points. I can also upload evidence and other relevant supporting documentation to this action here. Additionally, I can add my implementation details and test notes as a record. Now, when I go back to the overview page, I can see that my score has increased from the action I just implemented and tested. Finally, let's learn a bit more about the solution page. Your Microsoft 365 subscription comes with numerous security, compliance, and identity solutions. With Compliance Manager, we want to make it very easy to leverage these solutions in implementing and testing controls. For each solution, you can see the share of earned and potential points. Viewing your remaining points and improvement actions from this view helps you understand which solutions need more immediate attention and where there remains an opportunity for improvement. Similarly, if you're an admin that manages a specific solution, this view helps you focus on your day-to-day work more easily. Now remember, this initial view and score was based on common regulations and standards. You can make the tool even more powerful by using assessments that are most relevant to your organization. tune into our other deep dive sessions on creating our out-of-the-box assessments and custom assessments to learn more. Now that you understand how Compliance Manager helps translate complicated regulations and standards into simple language, maps regulatory controls to recommended improvement actions, and provides step-by-step guidance on how to implement solutions, we hope Compliance Manager helps your organization meet your regulatory requirements. As you get started, we encourage you to reference our key resources, including our E5 trial, technical documentation, and our other skilling sessions. Tune into our other Compliance Manager sessions, where Elliot will give you a deep dive on configuring both out-of-the-box assessments as well as custom assessments. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Liz. And thank you for joining today's session on how to create out-of-the-box assessments and monitor your progress with Compliance Manager. As we've all observed, the number of regulations that companies are subject to is increasing, as is the complexity of these regulations and the frequency with which they're updated. Many organizations collect consumer or user data, and there's an increasing need to protect that data. For example, following the enforcement of GDPR in 2018, many regions have enacted their own data protection regulations, several of which have gone into effect this year, including California's Consumer Privacy Act in July, Thailand's PDPA in May, and Brazil's LGPD in August. Accordingly, it has become increasingly difficult to stay up to date with the volume and frequency of new regulations and regulatory updates. We developed Compliance Manager to help you with this issue and are here today to show you how to assess, monitor, and improve your compliance posture using our solution. Now, I'll walk you through how you can make the best use of our library of over 150 out-of-the-box assessments, explain how you can make the most of their built-in control mapping, and provide some additional detail on the logic that goes into our powerful compliance score reporting capability. Here we are on the Compliance Manager homepage, where you can quickly assess your compliance posture by taking a look at your compliance score. Once configured, this score will illustrate your progress against the set of regulations and standards that you have chosen, based on their relevance to your organization. Your compliance score consists of points, which you achieve by taking recommended actions to improve your compliance. You are also given points based on the actions that Microsoft has taken on your behalf as your cloud service provider. To make your compliance score relevant to your organization, you'll first want to set up assessments, which represent the regulations that your company is subject to. To get started, let's jump straight into the Assessments tab. Here, you'll find a list of all of the assessments that have been set up in your tenant already. By pulling from these assessments, Compliance Manager provides specific and actionable compliance recommendations and shows you details regarding your compliance against the controls supporting these regulations. By default, you'll have the data protection baseline set up already, which provides a set of recommendations for how you can protect your data. The data protection baseline derives these recommendations from best practices for compliance across NIST, ISO, and GDPR frameworks. If you would like to quickly add additional assessments, you can do so by leveraging the Add Assessment button located on this tab. Alternately, if you prefer to take a closer look at the full library of assessment templates available to you, including digging in to the specific recommendations, actions, and control mappings, you can hop into the Assessment Template tab. Either way, you'll be able to leverage our expansive library of assessment templates, which cover major regulations and standards, as well as those pertaining to regional and industry-specific requirements. And in case we don't have what you're looking for, or you'd like to perform additional customization, you can modify assessment templates to meet any unique compliance needs you may have. Let's head to the Assessment Template tab to take a look at our options for assessment creation. Here, we can view our library of out-of-the-box assessment templates and dive into any specific templates of interest. For now, let's start working on NIST 853. We can click into this assessment template to take a closer look. Each out-of-the-box template maps to a specific regulation or framework, in this case, NIST 853, and contains all of that regulation or framework's control families and controls, built directly from the text of the framework. On top of that, we provide details on the actions that Microsoft has already taken to meet any relevant controls, as well as recommended actions that users such as yourself can implement to help address the remaining controls. As I mentioned, we are creating an assessment of this template to start the work of assessing ourselves against the NIST 853 regulation. If I wanted additional information on the included controls and actions, I could use the Controls, Improvement Actions, and Microsoft Actions tabs to perform a deep dive, or export the whole template to Excel. For now, though, we'll go ahead and click the Create Assessment button in order to bring the NIST 853 assessment into our tenant and start assessing ourselves against the regulation. Now, we can name our assessment as well as select a group. Groups help you manage your work on assessments in accordance with your organization's compliance processes. For example, if you'd like to delineate your compliance projects by audit year, subsidiary, or regional business unit, you can create representative groups and add assessments to each to separate the work. Once we add the assessment to the appropriate group, we can click Next, then review our choices and confirm by hitting Create Assessment, then Done, at which point we're redirected to our newly created assessment. It looks like we've already made some progress on this assessment. Microsoft's actions are contributing all of our current points, but Compliance Manager will also begin to scan our current M365 configuration and indicate when we complete recommended actions. If we want to extend beyond the Microsoft 365 product boundary, you can create a custom assessment to assess the compliance of non-M365 products. In fact, you can tune in to our other skilling session, which addresses exactly that. We can also click into the Controls tab to take a closer look at exactly how all these actions relate to the specific controls within NIST 853. Each assessment that we ship contains the mapping details of how the regulation or framework's controls relate to the actions we recommend, allowing you to see exactly how the work you're doing helps satisfy various control requirements. Here, we can see our progress within each control area and drill down into specific controls. Clicking directly into a specific control allows us to see recommended improvement actions for this control, as well as relevant actions already taken by Microsoft. Thanks to our control mapping framework, the actions that we recommend you take can be relevant to multiple controls within other assessments, removing the need for duplicative work. For example, turning on multi-factor authentication helps address controls from nearly 50 different regulations. As you take these recommended actions and address controls, you can export a report to demonstrate the work that you've done. This report will include all of the relevant status and documentation areas, including any notes that you've taken, showing you a complete picture of all of the work that you and Microsoft have completed. In addition to reporting, you can always refer back to your compliance score to see how the actions you have taken have impacted your overall progress. Your compliance score is a quantifiable measure of your compliance posture across all of your assessments and groups, and each action you take has a different impact on your score, depending on the potential risks you're helping to mitigate. As a result, the points assigned to each action can help prioritize where to direct your compliance efforts to maximize the impact on your overall compliance posture. Efficiency in achieving compliance and prioritizing actions to meet multiple regulations and standards is a must-have, but is often challenging. Now that we've discussed how you can make Compliance Manager work for you with our out-of-the-box assessments, let's dive into customizing those assessments to meet your business's unique compliance requirements. We understand that your organization may have compliance requirements that extend beyond the Microsoft 365 product space, or the regulations and frameworks that we offer, and have built this functionality to ensure that you can use Compliance Manager to holistically track your compliance work. Here we are on the Compliance Manager homepage, where you can assess your compliance posture quickly with your compliance score. Once configured, the score will illustrate your progress against the set of regulations and standards that you have chosen based on their relevance to your organization. Your compliance score consists of points, which you achieve by taking recommended actions to improve your compliance. You're also given points based on the actions that Microsoft has taken on your behalf as your cloud service provider. In our last video, we showed you how to set up our out-of-the-box assessments to get your organization's most accurate compliance score. Setting up custom assessments is a great way to continue on that journey and make sure your compliance score is most relevant to the regulations that your company is subject to. Clicking into our new assessment template tab, you can see over 150 out-of-the-box assessment templates that we offer, each containing actionable recommendations specific to Microsoft 365. As a quick refresher, an assessment template is the starting point for an assessment, representing all of the control information and action recommendations for the regulation or framework mentioned. However, it's only by creating an assessment from the assessment template that you unlock the ability to start recording your progress against those actions and receive a compliance score based on your work. For example, if you want to evaluate yourself against SOC 1 for Microsoft 365, the SOC 1 assessment template in Compliance Manager shows you the control framework for that standard, gives you a detailed view of how Microsoft implemented and tested actions that are part of its responsibility as cloud service provider, and provides step-by-step guidance on how to improve your compliance by taking actions to implement controls that are your responsibility as per the SOC 1 standard. If that's all you need, it's very simple and straightforward to create the assessment and complete your work. However, if your organization has unique compliance requirements that require additional customization, our custom assessment functionality can be used to help meet your specific compliance needs. The two most common custom assessment scenarios are to add new controls and actions to an existing out-of-the-box assessment template, or to create a brand new assessment template to evaluate your compliance against a specific regulation or use case that we don't support today. For that latter case, you can even export and incorporate components of our existing out-of-the-box assessment templates. This is particularly useful if you track against a custom compliance framework that draws on several existing regulations or frameworks that we already offer. Alternately, you could take our existing control mapping and recommendations for a regulation as applied to the M365 product space and expand them to other products that are already relevant to you. For the sake of this demonstration, I'll walk you through the process of adding new controls and actions to one of our existing assessment templates in a process we call extending a template. To make this easy for you, a wizard will walk you through the process, providing step-by-step guidance. Since we're extending an existing out-of-the-box template, we'll want to have one in mind before we start. Browsing through the assessment template library is a great way to figure out what our starting point will be. We can even export these templates to Excel, where they will closely approximate the format we'll need during the custom template creation process. Once we've decided what template we'll be using as a starting point, we'll choose to create a new template. Then we'll choose Extend a Microsoft Template and choose the template that we'll be using as our base. In this case, we'll choose ISO 27001. We'll also want to click on Download the Sample File to take a closer look at the format we'll be using to add new actions and controls in just a moment. Once we have chosen what template we want to extend, the next step is to provide an Excel sheet containing the relevant template, control, and action details we want to add to Compliance Manager. Remember, since we're just extending an existing template, everything we put in this Excel sheet will be added to the out-of-the-box assessment template that we already selected. If we want to edit that base ISO 27001 template, we would instead export it, make edits inline, and re-import as a new custom assessment template. But that's a topic for another video. For now, let's hop into Excel to take a closer look at what we'll be adding. The first tab, Template, contains the metadata that you'll use to define the title, relevant product and certification, and covered services for your custom assessment template. This is a great place to call out that this is an extension of an existing template and to specify any new products or services that you might be adding as part of the extension process. Next up is the tab Control Family, which contains all of the information about the controls that you want to add in this template, including their name or identifier, title, description, and control family or control area grouping. This tab is also used to map actions to controls using the Control Action Title column. This is a critical piece of your custom assessment template, as it tells Compliance Manager which actions relate to which controls. Remember, one action can contribute to the completion of multiple controls, and you can even reference actions that already exist in other out-of-the-box or custom assessment templates. Just add the action title in this column, and remember to use double semicolons to delimit the list of actions. Finally, we get to the Actions tab. This is where you'll add any new actions that you want as part of this template, and specify their various attributes, including how they are implemented, what their score is, their description, and any additional dimensions that you'd like for action sorting. Remember that an action's title is its unique identifier. You can't have two actions with the same title, so if you reference an existing action here but change its attributes, Compliance Manager will attempt to make those edits when you import this Excel file. In fact, if you want to include an action that already exists in Compliance Manager today, whether it is part of an out-of-the-box assessment template or you previously created it as part of a custom assessment template, you don't even need to list it here. You just have to include its title in the action mapping column for any controls that you want it to be related to. Once we've finished with this Excel file and imported it, we'll receive confirmation that the file is valid, as well as a summary of the items we're about to import. In case you made a mistake, Compliance Manager will provide any applicable error messages, as well as a copy of your Excel file with inline highlighting and error details to help you quickly resolve any issues. Once we complete our import, we can hop into the template in our new template drill down view, which highlights all of the various components of your template. You'll notice here that there is no status, because you haven't actually started working on an assessment. You've only set up an assessment template. To take that next step, you can use the Create Assessment button and start getting to work. With more than 220 updates every day from 1,000 regulatory bodies around the world, we know it is challenging to keep up to date with the evolving compliance landscape. All of our Compliance Manager assessments are kept up to date as changes take effect on a given regulation or standard. This capability helps you stay ahead on regulatory changes, as well as offering the flexibility of whether to immediately take changes into your assessments or postpone them to the most opportune time. We hope you found today's session on configuring custom templates helpful. To learn more about our out-of-the-box template configuration, please tune into our other deep dive session. On behalf of my co-presenter Liz and I, thank you for watching this series on how to best use Compliance Manager. I hope you enjoyed it and will try out our product. Have a great day.